Hi everybody, today is day 74 and it is January 9th. Sorry the lighting looks really bad right now, but it's just like kind of grainy I guess. Anyway, um, today I think I'm just going to do a top 10 list. I considered doing part 2 of my top 10 TV shows, but I think I'm going to save that one for later because I kind of wrote out a list and that's at home right now and I am not currently there. So I'll do that one another time. But I am going to continue and do a top 10 list today, and I'm going to do my top 10 favorite books. So I'll go ahead and get started. So my first favorite book, I don't know, I'm going to just count it as like one because it's a series. I'm going to count it as one book, and it's the Harry Potter series. Love this. I could probably do like a whole vlog just on Harry Potter alone, and I think I'll probably do that on Harry Potter's birthday in July. But I really love this series just because, I don't know, I think it's really, well, first of all, it reminds me a lot of just like being a kid because my mom read the first 3 books to us, me and my brother, when we were little kids, and it just, I don't know, it really reminded me of, I don't know, the first kind of series that I really got into, the first books that I was super interested in, and it kind of opened up like this love of reading. I still really love to read now. So I was kind of like, I don't know, introduced to books that time when I was like 5 years old through the Harry Potter series. I was also just really intrigued with the characters, and I think that that's one of the most appealing parts of the book is I find all the characters super appealing. They're flawed, even when they're like considered a good character. They're deep and they're changing. Like I really love how Harry starts the series as this 11-year-old boy, and he ends it as, you know, a 17-year-old who is totally different because one, he like changes through like growing up, but 2, he like goes through such a journey, and so that changes people. And so I really like how they're like ever-changing characters. Feels pretty real. And I also like how Harry does things that like, I don't know, that I don't think I would do, or like that are considered flawed things as well. And I like that because I think a lot of characters that in books I've read, like the main character is supposed to be kind of this flawless person. That bothers me because we're all like flawed humans. And I think it really stands out that Harry is not the perfect person in any way. Yeah, and I love how detailed it all is. When you're reading book 7, I think that like you can pick up on things from book 1, and it just all ties together, and it always really, I don't know, it just blows my mind how much it just connects, and I don't know, and how everyone just plays this like really important part. So, like I said, I could go on and on and on, but I'm not going to because I have 9 other books to talk about. So, the Harry Potter series is obviously my number 1 choice. But as always with top 10 lists, there is no particular order because that is just too hard for me to do. So, but if I had to pick an order, Harry Potter would obviously be number 1. Okay, moving right along. Number 2, I would say is The Help. This is definitely one of my top 10 favorite movies as well. And I think that the book, like, The Help to from like book to movie is actually one of the best book to movie, I don't know what you want to call it, like rendition that I've ever seen. That and another one of my favorite books that will come up later on. But like it's just so spot on. I'm always in awe of it. I really love the characters here as well. I think that that's like one of the key things for me to really love a movie or to really love a book is like the characters. 1, I have to have a character that I find relatable, and 2, I have to have a character that I find like almost as a role model, and I also just need to have characters that are just intriguing and have a cool backstory, and I don't know, I have interesting motives. I'm really curious. I think characters are like the number 1 aspect to a good book or movie. Just the story in general, I guess you could say. Yeah, so love The Help. I also really love how the historical aspects to it as well. Even though it is fiction, it's pretty crazy to me that like just like my mom was born in the 60s when this book and movie took place, and it's just crazy to me that that wasn't so long ago when we were treating people just so horribly. And I mean, arguably, we still treat people of minorities horribly nowadays too. And it's just like a good reminder that we, like, I don't know, we're living in history right now. Like, we need to be on the right side of history. That's just what I pick up on when I read this book, because they definitely had to break a lot of laws to just be able to get their story to be told in this book. It's incredible. I also really love how it changes perspectives between Aibileen, Minnie, and Miss Skeeter. Super cool, and I really love seeing the dynamic. Like, Minnie, the first time I watched it, I was like, Mom, Minnie's kind of like bitchy. Like, why won't she, like, I don't know, trust Skeeter? And then I was like, well, what can you blame her? Minnie's a black woman and Skeeter's a white woman, and just like how can you blame her? And so I think it's interesting too to like kind of start to pick up on these different perspectives and seeing the relationship and the dynamics between all the characters as well. So yes, love that book. All right, number 3, The Book Thief. I read this book in like 2 days, or if that. I think it might have been 1 day. I just couldn't get enough of this book. I think it's super interesting because The Book Thief is written from the perspective of death itself during World War II. So this is a super interesting time, and I love this like idea. It's just genius in my opinion. Like, wow. And I actually had to write a book report on it, which I'm proud to say I got 100% on, because you had to write an alternate ending in the same kind of style. And so I had the opportunity to write like my own ending to this book as death, and I don't know, it was just super cool to like really think about the style choices of even how it's not just how it's written and like the voice of the author, but like, you know, how he uses paragraphs. You know, it's actually quite interesting. There's bolded sections and asterisks all over the place, and these like kind of warning signs, and it's pretty interesting when it's utilized. Anyway, read the book, you'll see. It looks really cool. And it's kind of an interesting, I don't know, I would love to talk to somebody who's read the book before and like see what they think about something like that, because I don't think I have a lot of friends who've read it. I have seen this movie once or twice. I think I have it actually, but I don't think I've watched it that many times. And as I recall, it was good. I don't think it was amazing, but I think it was a pretty good rendition. But yeah, once again, I like the historical aspect. Actually, there's quite a few books on here that have historical relevance to them, I suppose, or like this historical fiction sort of thing. So I guess that's kind of something that I like. And yeah, I would say that this is definitely one of my favorite books, just because of the style choices and how different it is. It's new, and I like that a lot. Also, like I said, the characters are good, as always, but I think that the style and the idea behind it is like why it's so interesting. And it's a captivating story. I mean, here's this girl who goes to live with foster parents, and they are hiding a Jew in their basement during World War II, and they're in Germany, and it's like a big deal. And it also is interesting because she really likes to read, and so what she do? She steals books, and they burn books then. Like, you weren't allowed to read. And I found that super cool, too. Like, knowledge is power, you know, sort of thing. So, that's a great one. Okay, number 4, I'm going to go with The Shining. If you've seen my top 10 horror movie list, you'll know that I love this movie. Now, the book and the movie, this is probably the worst adaptation ever. The book is nothing like the movie, to be completely honest. The characters are somewhat the same, and the basic outline is somewhat the same, and that's it. But oddly enough, I love the movie for what it is, and I love the book for what it is. It actually didn't make me angry that it was so off, but I know that Stephen King was very upset with Stanley Kubrick's adaptation of his story because it just was so horrible, in his opinion. Now, I think it's great. The one, caveat to that, I would say, is that I think that, Jack Nicholson was already known for playing crazy people. Like, if you've seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which is a fantastic movie, by the way, he won an Oscar for it, so I'd highly recommend. But he's crazy. Like, he plays crazy characters, and I think, you know, when you read The Shining, like the book, you know, Jack is a normal man going into this hotel, and when he comes out, like, well, you know, obviously he's crazed. He's driven to madness by this hotel and being, you know, having cabin fever and just being stuck, you know. And I think when you start with the movie, it's not quite the same effect, because I think people just look at Jack Nicholson and is like, yeah, he plays crazy characters, like, that's what's going to happen. So that I can totally understand Stephen King's, like, criticism for. But like I said, I like both of them for what they are. Both a great movie and a great book, just not like the same thing. The book is really good because I think you get a lot more insight into Jack's deterioration, I guess, from being a relatively sane guy. I mean, he did have a drinking problem before they started out in the hotel, but for the most part, he was pretty stable, pretty normal guy, and I think you get to see a bit more of his deterioration in the book, which I like that a lot. And I feel like the hotel comes to life more in the book. Garrick, my brother, hates the book. I mean, I won't say he hates it. He doesn't like it as much as he likes the movie, actually, which is a big surprise because my brother's a huge reader. And Garrick, my brother, he's like, I think that he doesn't like the idea of the hotel coming to life. And I don't know, I like that idea. And I think that, like, maybe it's not necessarily a paranormal thing. Like, sure, that's cool. But I think it's that Jack is, like, really, truly losing his mind and is thinking that this hotel is alive. And the book starts to make you feel like the hotel is alive, too. With the whole boiler room, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to spoil anything. But it's super interesting. And I like Stephen King's writing. Sometimes he gets a little too in-depth about things. Like, there have definitely been books that I've read of his that he'll talk and talk and talk and talk about one thing for a few pages. I've attempted to read it. I hope to get back to it again, but it's well over 1,000 pages, and it's kind of one of those things. Like, I read the first 100 pages, and I was like, oh my god, he needs to get to the story. So there are a few instances like that in The Shining, but I think it's one of his better, well-written books. Plus, I live in Colorado. The Stanley Hotel is like an hour away from my house, so it's just like a big, cool thing that people love to talk about. Okay, moving right along. Number 5 is Pet Sematary, so another Stephen King book. I really like Stephen King, but Pet Sematary is the one that he personally has said is the scariest book of his, because it's partially true. His son, when his son was like 1 year old, they moved to Maine, and they lived at this house that was next to a pretty bad highway, and his son almost ran into the street, and Stephen King was able to save him just in time before a semi came. But it kind of haunted him, and he kept thinking, what would have happened if my kid was hit by a semi? And they were living next to a pet cemetery, actually, and this whole, I'm not going to say anything, but, like, obviously if you've read the book or seen the movie, this is, like, very, like, it should be ringing a bell, I should say. So it definitely, I think, hits home with the author, and so that definitely brings out, like, a more personal note in his writing, which I think is, like, pretty profound. And I'm super excited because they're remaking the movie, and it's coming out in April, so I cannot wait for that. The original movie is okay, but it's definitely very cheesy. It's an 80s movie, and it shows. The 80s did a lot of things well, but they make some cheesy movies as well. So, love this book. It's good, it's spooky, and very well written and told. Okay, number 6, The Kite Runner. This is a super, like, suspenseful book, and I would say that I read this in class, and so I was sort of hesitant on, like, what it was going to be about, because, like, a lot of times in class the books aren't as interesting, but I will say that even the kids who, like, never read books, everybody read this book, and we were all ahead, and you all had to, like, check with one another to make sure that you weren't, like, spoiling something, because we were not following the reading schedule, just everyone was ahead. Because it's such a good book, and the movie's okay. It's not my favorite, but I would highly recommend The Kite Runner. It deals with a lot of heavy content. I will warn you, there's some graphic scenes that are very disturbing. So that is a warning. But it's a really good book, very well written, super intriguing. Obviously, I could not put it down. And yeah, I think it's just suspenseful, and so you just need to know what happens. Like every chapter ends with some cliffhanger, and I don't know. I always had to know what was happening. So I think that that's one of the reasons it just really hooked me and captured me, and it captured most people, I would say. Okay, what was that? Number 7? Is this number 8? I think so. I don't remember. Let's see. Okay, we're on number 7. I think I miscounted at some point. Okay. In Cold Blood would be number 7. This is the scariest book I've ever read. And it's not by Stephen King. I can't remember who wrote it. Oh, duh. It's Capote. Truman Capote wrote this book. It's a terrifying book. I definitely had trouble sleeping after reading this one. It's based on a true story. It is a true story. The whole thing is. Happened in early 60s, late 50s, I think, where this seemingly very ordinary family in Kansas went to bed one night and they missed church the next morning, and everyone was very confused. So one of the daughter's friends goes over to their farmhouse, walks inside, and finds everyone shot in the head. Super crazy. Nothing was stolen from their house. They were just killed middle of the night. No one knows why. And it kind of follows the story of the 2 killers who went into their house, shot them all, almost raped the daughter, sliced the dad's neck, everything. Like it's an intense book, but it's super interesting because Truman Capote went and sat with these 2 killers on death row and talked to them for months about their story and their motives and their reasoning behind it. Like they had never met this family who they killed either. Like it's very odd. It was like a murder that was like very shocking to this small town. People go to this house now it's still this like old farmhouse, and people claim that it's haunted because it's just a site of like a horrific crime, clearly. And then they were ultimately killed on death row. But it's an interesting story, and I've never read a book on Truman Capote or seen the movie Capote, but he's an interesting guy. And they say, Truman Capote, I'm pretty sure was gay, and they talk about how they think he had some affairs with these murderers. Not sure if that's true, but it's interesting if you've read anything about him. I've done a little bit of research on Capote, but I have not seen a movie on him. But yeah, he took on this challenge, and after all these interviews with the murderers and the surviving family, the 2 sisters who didn't live at home, and some of their neighbors and the sheriff in town, like all these people, after kind of like putting together all these interviews, he combined all the information, and this book In Cold Blood was born. And I think there's a movie and a mini series. I have not seen it. It's fantastic. It's riveting. It's interesting. It's one of those, like, when I heard it was a true story and it's like not a fictional book, I was kind of like turned off by it, but actually it's a fantastic book. So highly recommend it. Very scary. Okay, I think this is number 8. The Lorax. I know that that's a kid's book, but it's definitely one of my favorite books. One of my favorite ones to read when I'm babysitting. My dad read this one all the time to me as a little kid, and I actually have a sign in my room that says my favorite quote, like ever, one of my all-time favorite quotes, and it says, wow, if I can remember it, you would think I'd remember it. It says, wow, never mind, I can't remember what it's called. Let me look it up, and I'm gonna edit this out. Oh yes, duh. Okay. It's unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. I love that quote. And I just love the whole story. First of all, how it's about the environment and just like we need to make a change so that like future generations are going to be okay here. And we need to take care of Mother Earth. I think that's really important. But I also think it just speaks to a larger idea as well, that we just like you can be the person to make a change, and that's really important too. Like if you're not going to do it, like nothing's going to get better. So we all have to like play our part in making the world a better place. And I really love that it's a kid's story, because change starts with young people, you know, and I love talking about that when I'm babysitting. Be like, what are you going to do when you grow up? Like, how are you going to help the world? And it makes me so happy, especially being in the classrooms, talking to those sorts of kiddos and being like let's talk about like what needs to change in this world, what needs to be good, what's bad right now, what can we change, how can we do it. And so I love that it's a kid's story, and it has just this powerful message. Plus the pictures are beautiful, and I love the way Dr. Seuss talks, all his fun words. I made a video when I was like 15 or something with my TV, for my TV class, all about the Lorax, so it was like a special one for me. Okay, number 9. Okay, so this is interesting. I was gonna say like Go Set a Watchman, which is interesting because I love To Kill a Mockingbird, and Go Set a Watchman is the sequel to Kill a Mockingbird, but I actually think I liked the sequel better, which I know a lot of people hated the sequel that came out a long time after To Kill a Mockingbird did. It only came out a few years ago, but I will say Go Set a Watchman, I read it in like, I don't know, a day or two. I think it was super intriguing. I think that it shows that we're not all like what we seem to be, that there are deeper levels to everybody, whether that be good or bad. I don't want to spoil anything. And I like seeing Scout grown up, and I think she's able to make opinions for herself in a different way, even if they differ from her family or her friends or her boyfriend. And I think that that's super cool. She's thinking for herself a bit more than, I mean, when the first book came out, she was like 9 or 10, right? So she just kind of like went along with what Atticus said or what Jem said, which wasn't necessarily bad, but I like her critical thinking. I like her strong will, and I like how she's a working woman in the 50s or 60s whenever this came out. I think it takes place in the 50s. And that's super unheard of, and I like that she kind of defies those norms as well. So I'm always really drawn to Scout as a character as well, and I don't know, it's a really good book, and I think I like Go Set a Watchman more than To Kill a Mockingbird. Unpopular opinion, but I liked it a lot. Alright, last one, number 10, The Roundhouse. I had to read this one for school my freshman year in college, and I was super bad, and read it the day before it was due. So, but I actually genuinely read all 400 pages of it. It's super great. It's a fantastic book. And I think it represents a minority that is not talked about a lot. It's a Native American, it takes place on a Native American reservation, modern day. And it's super cool because I was like thinking, I'm like, I actually don't think I've ever read books about Native Americans or like movies. You know, they're very underrepresented. So super cool. And I got to learn more about their culture and their beliefs and history a little bit. And I really liked that. Plus, it's an intriguing mystery. It's about this teenage boy who comes home one day, finds his mother and father in a panic because his mother was attacked and raped, and it happened on the reservation, and cops don't really get involved when it's something that happens on a reservation, not like in a town jurisdiction. So it's, and they knew that it was somebody there. And so it's an interesting like battle with legal system, and it's a super interesting book, but it also has this like and it's like I said, it's a heavy topic, but it's like got this childish aspect to it, because he's like this 14-year-old boy, and he and his friends, like, or maybe he's like 15, I don't know, he's like mid-teenage years, and he like hangs out with all his friends, and they get into lots of mischief, but at the same time, like, they're battling something pretty tough, and they're trying to figure out who they can trust and who they can't trust, and he wants to find revenge for his mom. And I don't know, it's a super cool dynamic, and I think it kind of represents, like I said, a culture that's not usually represented often, and I like that. All right, so that's all 10, but I do have a honorable mention here that I didn't include this as a book because it's not technically a book; it's a novella. But I mean, I guess it could technically be a book because it's like over 200 pages, but it is considered a novella, which means a short story. And it's in a collection of novellas by Stephen King, called, the overall story book is called Different Seasons. And the story I'm particularly talking about right now is called The Body. If you've ever seen the movie Stand By Me, that's what it's about. And it is, aside from The Help, actually, I think that this one might be even better. The book to the movie adaptation is like nothing I've ever seen before. It is word for word. Like, Rob Reiner took Stephen King's work and put it to life, and it was perfect. Like, reading the story and watching the movie, there's like no difference, honestly. And I don't have to talk about how much I love Stephen King's books, but I don't have to talk about how much I love Stand By Me because that was in a previous video, which I will link down below. But I really love The Body. It's a nice coming of age story, fall from innocence sort of thing. Kind of talks about friendship. It kind of talks about loss of friendship too, because at the end of the story, like, they're friends, but they're not really friends, you know? And I think that life happens and you're not always friends with the people that you were friends with when you were 12 years old. Like, sometimes I don't like all those movies or books that make it seem like everything's like the same all the time, because it's just not. People change. And I really like that aspect. It's really cool when they're friends at that time. But like I said, things change. People change too. And it's really well written, and it's kind of pure. Just like, they just want to go swimming and hang out, and they're just getting into trouble. They just want to go and see this dead body, and but they find each other along the way, and they find themselves along the way. So, super great story. Thank y'all for sticking with me to the end, and I'll see y'all for tomorrow. Bye.